Thank you for tuning in to the best parenting show on the internet, Post Daily Dose.
It's the Post. It's the Post. It's the Post. The Post Daily Dose. It's the Post. It's the Post. It's the Post. The Post Daily Dose. It's the Post. It's the Post.
Good evening, Facebook. Welcome to another episode of Post Daily Dose with me, your trusted parenting advisor, faithful guide, and servant on the healing journey. What's my name? Big Papa Brian+Post. I hope everyone is doing fantastic today. Just wanted to pop on here and spend a little time with you and talk to you about some tips for helping your child survive the school day. So this morning, in one of my exchanges with one of the parents in the Matrix program, she was asking about, actually from Germany, she was asking about some things that she could do to help her son, who has a lot of anxiety and a lot of insecurities when it comes to school and staying at school, and he doesn't like to go to school and doesn't like to stay at school. And so I thought, you know what, I wrote an article some years ago, before the gray hairs actually, about helping, some things that schools could do to help children be able to succeed. Hey there, Leslie and Debbie. Good to see you guys. And some things that the schools could do to help the kids to succeed and survive the school day without having to, go home. And sometimes these things can be useful to be included in IEPs. So I had copied that response and put it in the private Facebook group, the Lovevolution membership group. But I thought I would go ahead and share that with you all today, because I am sure the few of these tips will come in very, very handy for you. So let's get right to it. I'm just going to read them right here off the screen. So some tips I give to parents to help with children that have anxiety at school are: number one, talk to him about how scary it must have been for him as a baby to not have anyone making him feel safe right after he was born. So this was a young man who was adopted and spent some time, in I think NICU and then in foster care before he was finally got to transition into his forever home. Now here's what's important, and this is how you apply this to your child. Depending on the history, see, especially with adopted and foster children, a lot of times transitions are very, very difficult. And then there's also the fear, just a looming fear, depending on your child's age. So, until your child, healthy development is 8, 9 years old, they don't begin to have sustainable abstract thinking. So everything is very concrete. And in that regard, when you are out of sight, you are out of mind. So for some children, that can be pretty overwhelming. Hey, Lala. Just on a break. I'm glad to see you. Hey, it's nice for you to join us on your break. So it can be pretty overwhelming for a child to leave home. And I have said to schools routinely, and especially foster parents, sometimes these children leave home and they have a looming fear in the back of their head that they may not return home. So can you imagine the anxiety that would create if you left for work every single day and somewhere in the back of your mind, you didn't know where you were going to come home to? You didn't know if your stuff was going to be there when you got home. You didn't know if these people that you called mom and dad this morning were going to be there waiting for you in the afternoon. Can you imagine how much anxiety that would create for you and how much insecurity and how much fear? So depending on your child's history, it may be really important to talk to him or her about what that early experience was. And so my suggestion to the mom here for number one is to tell him how much you wish he had been able to come home after he was born. And so it's just talking to the unconscious mind of the child. Children, they can make sense of a lot more than you think they can. And if there's a lot of unconscious fear that's been showing up for this child, when you make statements like that, when you take the time to talk to the child about their early experience and how scary it must have been and how sad you are that they had to be afraid and be all alone, it can make a huge difference, because it really starts to integrate emotions that they have that they haven't been able to make sense of, because a lot of times these are pre-verbal. Number 2, tell him that he can call you and check in anytime he starts feeling anxious. Now, this is a big one, and sometimes you'll have to get this written into IEP because schools can be kind of stubborn. But just call your child mid-morning or mid-afternoon. If schools allow children to take cell phones to school, send them a text message. Let him text you. And so this is for the school to give the child permission that if he starts to feel anxious, that he can go to the office and call the parent. And it's just a check-in. Doesn't have to be a lengthy conversation. Just a, hey, mom, hey, dad, just calling. And, kids get awkward when they get on the phone, and they're going to get kind of quiet. And you're just asking them, how you doing? Hope you're doing well. I'm glad you're having a good day, and I look forward to seeing you after school. Or maybe I will call you this afternoon and check on you again. Boom, done. And what that does is it resets the child's window of tolerance. So you have to realize that the only reason children are unable to perform and sustain through the school day is that their window of tolerance gets too small and the stress gets overwhelming, and then they end up with an exhausted window of tolerance. They regress, they're overwhelmed, they're emotionally regressed, and they just can't handle it. And so instead of us looking at it like our children are doing something wrong or that they're just choosing to not want to be at school, let's reframe that. And that's what we do outside of the parenting matrix. So inside of the parenting matrix, we're always focused on things like children being manipulative or just not wanting to be at school or just wanting to do what they want to do or not wanting to do their work. See, we always take this frame of reference that they're doing something against us. And so then we end up with this us against them mentality, and that's very common inside the parenting matrix. But when you step outside of the parenting matrix, you start to create a framework that says, look, bottom line, my child has gone outside of his window of tolerance. And once that happens, that means he's stressed. That means he's emotionally regressed, and he's acting out from that place. And my responsibility is to help him expand that window of tolerance, reset that window of tolerance, so that he can be successful. So just giving the child permission to call the parent mid-morning, mid-afternoon can reset that window of tolerance. Now, here's another really good one. Have you, as the parent, call your child mid-morning and mid-afternoon. I actually had a parent do this. The parent was asking me about some challenges going on with her child. And I said, why don't you give the school a call? And the first thing she says, the school they won't ever let me talk to her. And I said, why don't you give it a shot? She turned right around, called the school. Sure enough, school called and had the little girl come down to the office. She was able to talk to her. Her little girl was able to say she was okay, and she was able to go back to class and be successful. So you calling your child mid-morning, mid-afternoon, and I say mid-morning because you're giving them a little bit of time to get into the routine, go through some transition, get a little settled, start to let their window of tolerance wear down. Leslie says, what do you say to them when they call? You say, hey, honey, how are you? Thanks for calling me. I'm glad you called. Is everything going okay? Yes, Mom, everything's going fine. Well, good. Or is everything going okay? No, Mom, I'm feeling really stressed. Okay, honey. Well, let's just take some deep breaths together. And right now it's 10 o'clock, so you only have another hour before you got lunch and recess. And then after that, only a couple more hours before you get to come home. And I look so much forward to you coming home. I love you so much, and I miss you. Do you miss me? When you get home, I'm going to tickle you, or we're going to have some really yummy food, or we're going to play and we're going to snuggle and we're going to have a bottle. Does that sound good? Yes, Mom. Okay, great. Fantastic. I'll see you later. Okay, do really good. Bye, baby. Done. Just like that. Simple. You don't have to be elaborate. Doesn't have to go into any kind of detail. You're just connecting and you're supporting, you're strengthening the relationship, and then you're restoring your child's window of tolerance. So, you giving the child a call mid-morning, mid-afternoon helps because you're taking the initiative. You're taking the initiative to reach out, connect, and help expand. And then let's see, number 4. Put a note in his lunchbox. How cool is that? Don't we all like to get a little note from time to time before you're going on a trip, and you get halfway through your trip and you happen to look in your bag and there's some cute little note from your loved one? So put a note in his lunchbox that says something funny and cute and ends with, this is important, can't wait to see you back at home. What does that say to the child? That says, when I get back home, Mom and Dad's going to be waiting for me. Mom and Dad's going to be waiting for me when I get back home, so I don't have anything to worry about. There is a home for me to return to when the school bell rings. I once worked with a child, golly, it's just popped in my head, years ago. As a foster child, her home had burned down. So like the year before, the home she was living in had burned down, and a year later, she was in a new home, and she was bombing out of school. All it took was finding out that home that she came from had burned down, the stress and the anxiety that created, and saying to that little girl, eye to eye, honey, you will have a home when you get out of school. When that school bell rings, you will have a home you will be able to go to. Ashley says, had a pretty cool breakthrough with a family I work with at school. School called to have parent pick up child for being disruptive. So I encourage mom to validate the feelings and offer to go to class or remind her that she would be there after school to pick her up. Mom did great. Child was receptive and actually wanted mom to go to class with her. It was a super exciting moment because mom was able to co-regulate child in a way she had never considered to keep the kid in school. Fantastic. Ashley says little things can be so impactful. It's the little things that make all the difference, guys. It's the little things in our ability to calm down, slow our brains down, think clearly, and focus that we can actually come up with those little things. Just those little bitty things can change. It's the little things that change everything. It's the little nuances. It's the little nonverbal cues. It's the tone of voice. It's the little touch. It's the little eye contact. It's the little smile. It's the little things all the time that make the big things. It's the 20% that affects 80% of the outcome. 20% of what you do affects 80% of the outcome. Unfortunately, we spend 80% of our time on stuff that doesn't matter. On 80% of the time we spend on stuff that doesn't matter. When in fact it's 20% that impacts the entire trajectory, the relationship, the nurturing in the home, the affection, everything. So keep that in mind. So a little note in the school box, then number 5, make sure he is doing okay during group activities and transitions. These are times when children with stress sensitivity issues can easily get overlooked and bullying can occur. Really, really important. The biggest challenges for most adopted and foster children, most children who are stress sensitive and fearful, are the major transitions in schools. First thing in the morning, recess, group activities, and cafeteria. So group activities like physical education. So first thing in the morning, getting the transition of going from home to getting into the school, the group activities, which, a lot of times teachers will break kids up into groups. Sometimes that can be too much for a stress-sensitive child. You give them one-on-one. And then recess, another big group activity, cafeteria, and then also recess and physical education like PE, and then the cafeteria. Those are all really important transition points to keep in mind for your child. Okay, number 6, see if he can have an assigned check-in person at the school, someone who will check in with him at school. Sometimes it's just a matter of creating an opportunity for the child to have another regulatory figure in their life. We end up playing that role as the parents, but it doesn't always have to depend on us. So sometimes just having another regulatory figure, whether it's the school counselor or it's an older kid in the school. I love to make older kids mentors. I love to make younger kids mentors to even younger kids. So you take a 5th grader and make him a mentor to a kindergartner. It gives them a renewed sense of responsibility. And you take the teenager, the high school kid or the junior high kid, and make him a mentor to the child who's in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade. It just creates a great dynamic of peer influence, positive peer influence. So giving the child someone he can connect to and check in with, because that helps his window of tolerance. Okay, the number 7 is suggest increased physical contact from his teacher. A pat on the shoulder, a gentle back rub, a handshake, etc. And of course, hugs are great, as is eye contact. So encourage your child's teacher to reach out to them. Give them more eye contact, smile at them, give them a good handshake, give them a freaking hug. They're kids. Hug them, tell them they're important and that you're so proud and so glad to have them in your classroom. And encourage the teachers and encourage the other members of the school just to be friendly. And I remember And when I was in junior high school, we had a principal, Mr. Hawkins. I really enjoyed Mr. Hawkins, but he was like a really rigid former Marine, and wore the buzz cut, and he was always pretty serious. But he was always the kind of person who would look at you and say, "Having a good day," or "Good morning, Brian." And, every now and then he'd extend his hand and he'd have a handshake. And so he was never threatening. But a lot of kids were kind of threatened by Mr. Hawkins. But I always thought he was a really great guy and was never really threatened by him. And it's just a matter of the teacher's ability and willingness to kind of extend themselves and interact with the child in a way that's a little bit different than what they normally would. Remember, your child is the stress-sensitive, easily fearful child. So you just got to help the teachers and the counselors understand that because of the trauma they've experienced, they're just sensitive to stress, and stress can happen in any of the sensory pathways. It's not just what we classify as being stressed or being stressed out. It can happen in any of the sensory pathways. And when that happens, their fear increases and they become fearful. And when that happens, they regress. And when they regress, they become their emotional age, not their chronological or their cognitive age. So keep those things in mind. And again, remember, you have the ability to get some of these things written into the IEP if needed. So the school has to be more accountable for your child. You have to be your child's greatest advocate, because oftentimes no one else will be. In any given situation, guys, we always have two choices. We can continue to operate like the parenting matrix informs us to, which is to do the same thing over and over and expect a different result, which is just based in fear and based in stress. Or we can stop, we can take 3 to 10 deep breaths, we can slow down, and we can choose love. And over a period of time, we start to step outside of the matrix and do things differently. And you, mom, dad, professional, teacher, can still join us in the parenting matrix as we're transcending, breaking through, changing lives, and getting more empowered to see things differently than has ever been done before. All you got to do is go to theparentingmatrix.com, follow the instructions. We'd love to see you in the private Facebook group, joining us, interacting with us, and creating a healing opportunity for your child and for your family. God bless each and every one of you. Big Papa loves you. I hope you have a fantastic evening. I hope you get a good night's rest. I hope when you lay your heads down this evening, that pillow embraces you like a cloud, and that mattress cuddles you and makes your body feel relaxed and loved and supported, and all the cells of your body are able to open up and release all the generations of trauma and stress and fear that have been passed down through the generations to you. They are now upon you, and I want it all to be released. And when you wake up in the morning, I want you to be restored, refreshed, re-energized, reinvigorated, and ready to make an amazing day, because God loves you, and I love you too. We'll see you tomorrow.